She was halfway down the range, stapling a fresh paper target, when the laughter started behind her. Not loud, not cruel, just careless. The kind that assumes the world won't change in the next 5 minutes. She kept her head down, fingers trembling slightly as the wind lifted the edges of the paper, unaware that a single choice, someone else's, not hers, was about to redraw the lines of respect. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're rewatching from. I love knowing who's listening. Her name was Mara Collins, and on paper, she didn't belong there. Civilian contractor, range assistant, the person who walked forward when the line went cold and walked back before it went hot again. She wore ear protection too big for her head and gloves that had seen better days. To most of the men on the firing line, she was part of the scenery, useful, invisible, temporary. The morning air was sharp, carrying the smell of oil and scorched metal. Sunlight cut across the range in pale stripes, dust drifting lazily as if time itself had slowed. The SEALs rotated through drills with practiced ease, their movements efficient, confident, almost bored. They were chasing numbers now, times, groupings, records, that mattered only because they said something to the men who chased them. Mara finished stapling and raised her hand. The line went hot again. She retreated to the side, heart settling back into its familiar rhythm. This was her place on the edge of things, close enough to feel the impact, far enough to never be tested. She told herself she preferred it that way. She hadn't always. Once, she dreamed of more. Of standing where they stood. Of proving something to herself more than anyone else. But life had a way of narrowing paths. A family illness, a scholarship lost, a moment where doing the right thing meant stepping aside instead of pushing forward. She had learned to live with almost. The shots rang out in controlled bursts. Steel sang. Paper tore. Numbers flashed on digital boards. Someone cursed under his breath. Another laughed. Then one rifle jammed. It was a small thing, a hiccup in an otherwise flawless morning. The SEAL lowered the weapon, irritation flickering across his face. He cleared it quickly, but the interruption lingered, breaking the rhythm. He glanced to the side and noticed Mara watching, not staring, just watching, the focus that didn't belong to someone who was supposed to be invisible. "Hey," he called, more curious than sharp. "You shoot?" A few heads turned. Someone snorted quietly. Mara hesitated. This was the moment she usually avoided. The question that carried weight she didn't want to lift. She could lie. She could deflect. She could smile and say a little. Instead, she nodded once. "I used to." The SEAL studied her for a beat longer than necessary. He was older than most of the others, lines etched deep by sun and years. He had the look of someone who'd learned when to listen. Without a word, he stepped forward and held out his rifle. The range seemed to inhale. Mara's first instinct was refusal. Every reason she'd built over the years rushed back: protocol, pride, the risk of embarrassment. Her hands felt suddenly too small, too unworthy. She started. He met her eyes, calm, certain. "One run," he said. Then he stepped back. The murmurs spread like a ripple through water. This wasn't part of the schedule. This wasn't how things were done. Someone chuckled nervously. Someone else crossed his arms. Mara took the rifle. It was heavier than she remembered, familiar in a way that surprised her. She adjusted the sling, feeling the eyes on her back like heat. The world narrowed, as it always did when she focused, the range stretching out before her. The target a quiet promise in the distance. Her hands shook, just a little. She breathed in, slowly. Thought of the nights she'd practiced alone, when no one was watching. Thought of the version of herself that had stepped aside so others could move forward. Thought of how close she'd come to forgetting this part of herself entirely. She raised the rifle. The first shot landed clean. The laughter stopped. She moved through the drill with a rhythm that surprised even hers, smooth, unhurried, precise. Each shot found its mark. The air seemed to still, the only sounds the steady crack of fire and the faint rustle of wind through dry grass. Halfway through, doubt crept in. A voice whispered that this was a mistake, that she was overstepping, that she'd be exposed any second now. Then she remembered why she'd loved this in the first place. The honesty of it. The way skill didn't care who you were, only what you could do. She finished the run. Silence followed. Thick. Charged. Someone let out a low whistle. Another shook his head slowly, as if trying to wake from a dream.
Ow.
The SEAL who'd handed her the rifle didn't smile, but his eyes softened. That, he said quietly, was solid. The moral tension hung in the air. Was it right to blur lines like this? To hand over a weapon, a test, a moment of trust to someone outside the ranks? Some of the men looked uneasy. Others looked thoughtful. Respect, it turned out, was contagious. Mara handed the rifle back, her pulse finally catching up with her. She expected applause, or judgment, or nothing at all. What she got was a nod, one by one, simple, earned. Later, as the drills resumed and the range settled back into its familiar rhythm, the older SEAL approached her again. "You ever think about coming back?" he asked. Not to the range, to the dream she'd set aside. Mara considered the question, feeling its weight. She thought of the choices she'd made. The roads not taken. The peace she'd found in acceptance and the quiet ache that still lived there. "I think," she said slowly, "I never really left." He smiled then, just a little. As the sun dipped lower and the targets were cleared away, Mara walked the range one last time. The paper flapped softly in the breeze, edges torn where bullets had passed through. She felt lighter, not because she'd proven something, but because someone had seen her. Because courage doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits patiently for an open hand. Because kindness doesn't vanish, it waits, and it finds its way back. She had started the day replacing targets, careful not to be noticed. She ended it remembering who she was, standing in the open, unafraid of the silence that followed her shots. If this story stayed with you, share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if you believe quiet potential deserves a chance to be seen, subscribe for more stories like this. Your support keeps these moments alive.